And we're live.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council meeting for Monday, May the 9th, 2022. Before we get into our regular council agenda, we do have Fiddleville Nonprofit Housing Corporation meeting tonight. We have two meetings actually. Our annual general meeting first, and then following that, we will have our regular quarterly board meeting. So I'll call the AGM to order first. We have established quorum, so we're okay there. Are there any conflict of interest declarations before we get started? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last annual general meeting, which was held June 14th, 2021? Member Fegan, seconded by Member Hall. Any discussion on those minutes? All in favor? It's carried. All right, on to the review and approval of the audited financials ending December 31st, 2021. We have our auditor, Ben Cole, back again this year. Ben, how are you?
I'm great. Nice to be here.
I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And good evening, everyone. I'll just speak for a few minutes regarding the annual financial statements, which were included with your board package. They were completed late last week. As you mentioned, the fiscal year end for the Nonprofit Housing Corporation is December 31st. And my involvement as auditor is on an annual basis, of course, to issue an audit report on those statements, primarily for the benefit of the County of Dufferin. As a condition of their funding, they require an audit report on these statements. The audit report is on page 2 and continues on page 3. As in previous years, we report in accordance with specific accounting principles prescribed by the county that are unique to social housing corporations. And I'm saying in the audit report, my conclusion, which is at actually the top of page 2, I haven't run into any concerns. So I'm expressing an opinion that the financial statements are fairly stated and reasonable. The audit report's dated today, presuming the board of directors will approve them today. That's how we date the audit reports now, to coincide with that approval. The actual numbers start on page 4, and I'll just briefly go through pages 4, 5, and 6. The rest of the document is really explanatory notes and accounting policies, and we don't need to go through all of those unless anybody has questions about them. The balance sheet on page 4 is a snapshot of where the company stood at December 31st. And you're in a pretty healthy position at this point. Just working from the top down and making a few comments. Cash in the general fund bank account was $156,000. Accounts receivable, $24,000. That includes your HST rebates. So as a nonprofit, you recover most of the HST that you pay on expenses. That would also include any rents outstanding, but most of that number is HST. Subsidy receivable for the month of December, $28,000. That arrives the first week of January. It's always paid a month in arrears. The reserve fund investments invested with WorldSource, $88,000. And the property, plant, and equipment number, $919,000. That's the original cost of the land and building, which was financed by a mortgage, by debt, and it's being written down as the debt is paid down, and that's a policy unique to social housing providers prescribed by the county. So it has nothing to do with the market value of the land and building, okay? It's historical cost. The SHRP capital improvements line, 0 this year. SHRP was a program that rolled out in the 2008 financial crisis, and it funded some specific projects around the building, and it was a forgivable loan. So the costs were set up as an asset and the loan was set up as a liability, but they stated after 10 years it would be forgiven so long as you continued on as a social housing provider. So this year we've written off the debt and the asset. So that's why that is 0 this year, and the numbers had been sitting there for the previous decade unchanged. Okay, looking at liabilities, nothing really unusual or exciting going on. We've got some accounts payable in the general fund. Those are things like utilities and the audit bill and any unpaid wages at December 31st that get paid in the new year. Last month's rent deposits, that's money that tenants have paid, of course, that's in the bank account, and it's, you know, you owe them a month of rent or you give them the money back when they leave. Subsidy payable, 123,000. I just want to comment as to why it's so large. The county has fallen behind. They do an annual review of these financial statements and the subsidy calculations, but they have not completed their review for 2019 and 2020. So we now have 3 years of, you owe some of the subsidy for each of the year back to the county. And that's built up now at this point. So I'm not quite sure why they've fallen behind. This has happened before. About a decade ago, they fell 2 or 3 years behind, but hopefully they'll get caught up and next year we'll kind of know where we stand. In the meantime, you have your money or their money in your bank account, so it's not entirely a bad thing. The long-term debt is the mortgage. So the long-term portion and the current portion add up to 919,000. And you're paying off your mortgage now at close to 200,000 a year. So you've really only got about 5 or 6 years left before that mortgage will be fully paid off. We'll flip over to page 5 for a moment. The unrestricted surplus at the top of page 5 is your kind of your normal operating surplus. It's you can do with it as you please. And it's built up nicely over the last few years. 112 at the beginning of the year, and we're showing another surplus this year of 18,000. So 131,000 is the running total. So I don't think it's ever been that high as long as I've been involved as your auditor. So it's good news. The reserve fund, on the other hand, is perennially in trouble, right? They've never really funded reserve funds properly for social housing projects. So you've had a lot of projects in recent years, including this year. So you've got annual funding coming in and a little bit of investment income, but it's in a deficit position at the end of the year for $7,600. Page 6 is your statement of operations. So the top half showing your revenues, the bottom half your expenses. The market rents and RGI rents are both up a little bit, and your occupancy is very stable as it has been for years. Your target is to have 28 rent geared to income tenants and 17 market, and you're very close to that occupancy over the course of 2021. I think you're only off by about half a unit over the course of the year. As I mentioned earlier, the shirked revenue of 226 is really just an accounting entry. It's not real money coming in, and the offsetting expense at the bottom line of expenses, it washes out to zero. That's just getting rid of that liability and that asset from a decade ago. The county subsidy was $346,000. You do have a little bit of laundry and interest revenue, and the solar panel revenue, $8,300. If you're wondering why it was so low the year before, $1,100, it was because of the roof replacement. The panels were not operating for most of 2020. So the $8,300 figure this year is actually more close to the average that we've seen in recent years. I'll comment for a minute. The subsidy adjustment in brackets of 51,000 is what we're expecting you'll have to repay to Dufferin County. And you might wonder why they send you $346,000 and then ask for $51,000 back. And there's really 2 reasons. If you'll notice the second revenue line, the RGI rents, the county estimated your required subsidy based on $90,000 of RGI rent revenue, and you've generated $115,000. So because you've generated more rent revenue than expected, they're saying, well, you didn't need as much of our subsidy. So that's about $25,000 of it. And then down in expenses, you'll notice municipal property taxes, the county used a figure of $100,000 in their subsidy calculations, and the taxes were only 82,000. We're not quite sure why they used that number, because it was not the budget number that Bayshore submitted to them, but that is what they used in their subsidy calculations. And with property taxes, they fund the actual expense. So they've basically paid you too much subsidy because they used 100,000 as the expected tax expense. So I hope that makes some sense. It's really those two lines that is generating most of the subsidy repayment this year. In terms of the other expenses, they were really pretty stable and pretty close to budget. As I mentioned earlier, the third expense down, amortization, that's the accounting terminology, but that really what that is, that's the principal portion of your mortgage payments. And so you can see you're getting close to 200,000 a year that you're repaying, and the mortgage balance is only 919. And the interest cost keeps falling every year. It's only 28,000 this year. Overall, the bottom line, the very bottom line, 18,830 is your surplus for the year, even after we count for the subsidy repayment to the county. So a good result. I won't go on any further. I'll just try and answer any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Can I get a motion to approve the audited financial statements for December 31st, 2021? And then if there's any questions or comments, we can deal with those. Member Bernardo, seconded by Member Fegan. All right. Okay, any questions for Ben? No. Okay.
I'm getting on.
Yeah. Okay. Means you did a good job explaining it, I guess. Call the question then. All in favor? That's carried. Excellent. Okay. Trevor or Donna, was there anything else for the AGM before we move into the regular board meeting?
Donna?
No, there's nothing else.
Okay. All right. Can I have a motion to adjourn the AGM then? Member Bernardo, seconded by Member Buffett. All in favor? That's carried. All right. So we'll call the regular board meeting to order at 6:44. We still have quorum. Are there any conflicts of interest with respect to this meeting? Don't see any. I have a motion then to approve the minutes from the last regular board meeting of January 24th. Member Hall, seconded by Member Bernardo. Any discussion? All in favor? It's carried. All right. You want to do the financial report first?
Yes. Can everybody hear me okay? Because my wife does meetings all day long, but I don't know, I guess at evening the bandwidth gets limited out here even more. So
Yep.
if we can turn to page 8. Okay. We'll just go through, Ben just went through page 9, which is the balance sheet, and it's not materially changed since the last board meeting. So if we can just look at January, February, and March of this fiscal year on page 8, there's 2 columns in the middle, year-to-date actual, year-to-date budget. If you're a bottom line person, you peek to the bottom line, we have an $18,000 surplus so far to year-to-date. Most of it is, if you see market rent, we are over market rent. The good thing about COVID is we have had very few vacancies because, you know, rents have changed. So our market prices are excellent. RGI is a little higher than expected. Subsidy revenues are to the dollar. There's no lines there that are too material on the revenues. First mortgage, we know exactly what that is. Wages and benefits, we know what that is for all intents and purposes. We're to the dollar. So here's some nice wins right now. Other building general, the budget's 11,000. We're only at 3,500. That's a little bit of reflection on vacancy usually. So we do have a couple coming up. So that will get affected, but right now we are ahead, which is a win. Internet services, we pay that quarterly. It's just $300 a month. And we have a lot of users, about 50 users on there all the time. So that's nice. The elevators a little bit above. Snow removal, it's under. We do have some contingency there at the end of the year. You know, it wasn't a very bad year. We didn't have to pay a lot of extras, so we should have a win, a surplus in that category. Landscaping, you see there's no budget, there's no expenses because I don't have a budget for the first 3 months of the year for landscaping, obviously. Heating and plumbing, we're a little bit above. Painting, there's no expenses so far. Waste removal has gone up. That's one of those lines that's gone up simply because the price of gas for waste delivery companies, and they've increased our fees to us, which I understand. Security underneath, which is fine. Electricity, we're slightly over. That does compare to last year at this point. So, you know, it's just slightly above, but only $1,000. Heating, natural gas and oil, we're slightly above. And water and sewage is actually because we have, we actually get all the water bills for the building, and then we have to pull it out at the end of the month to attribute it to the townhouses. So that is, we are on pace. I did examine our water bills to make sure everything's fine there. Municipal taxes, almost to the dollar. Insurance slightly above. Education allowance, we do have money for education, but nobody's going anywhere these days. Audit and accounting fees, we pay Ben in June for the audit. So that's why we don't have any budget there or any expenses. Bank interest charges, nothing too material. Our management fees are there. So we're showing $18,000. Some of that will go back, but we mentioned before, we are not having a problem operationally. Our issue is constantly just the capital, the underfunding there.
So Trevor, on that point, I mean, Ben just reviewed the fact that, you know, we have a fairly healthy surplus again, and that account, you know, is growing. And I think you said, Ben, it's about $135,000. Should we be looking at maybe moving some of that money over to the reserve, Trevor?
We did. And that last board meeting, we approved $50,000.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just did it this month. Now, we went 50-50 on bonds and, you know, equities. The investor was sort of giving a little bit of pushback whether we should be going to equities right now, but, you know, like, just, we're not financial advisors, and the model is you put some in the bonds, you put some in equities, and you try to break even. So that's what we did.
Okay.
Okay, the next page is, like I said, the balance sheet. There is no material changes from what Ben just discussed, and for the point of brevity, page 7. Oh, I think that's yeah, page 7 is part of our financial package. That's all the contractors that were in since our last board meeting. So the stuff that was done outside, you see some appliance work was done. And then very quickly, we have a delinquent payment report at the end there, at the very last page. That has been managed since this was done. And we're down to $16,000, but $8,000 of it is one person. And they paid us $1,300 and they've now vacated. You might remember the last board meeting, we worked with them, we went to the tribunal. And in fact, we were going to continue working with them, but they simply couldn't manage doing it. So they vacated on their own, left the unit in a minor disaster. It's going to cost us some money, but we did the right part on our end. Like, we being collectively this corporation and this board. But there's no other. Yep, Walter. Sorry, to the chair.
Yeah, no, go ahead. You're muted there, Walter.
On the question of the one that vacated the unit, we're still going to pursue for the funding, aren't we, through whatever methods we use?
I'm sorry.
The ones that vacated the unit, are we still going to pursue them for the money owing through whatever methods we use to get our money?
Yeah, one of our best methods is they can't come back onto the waiting list again for subsidy. And you'd be surprised unless they make a payment plan. They added that about 7 or 8 years ago now. Time flies. We get a lot of money that way because they'll end up in Own Sound and they'll give us, you know, $3,000 to get on the waiting list. So that's pretty effective.
Okay. So in the end, we do collect it all, or do we at some point have to forgive some of it?
Yeah, we probably collect about 30% of what we lose. Only about 30%.
And is there any method of reporting them to other social housing that we've had this kind of issue with?
Great question. And absolutely, there is, we send it to the county of Dufferin and there is a provincial wide database. That's why when they show up in Owen Sound or in Kincardine or, like Windsor, they know exactly that they owe money to us and they have to call us. So it's provincially done. It's great.
Okay, I'm just worried that while they may stiff us for a certain amount of money, we may have to forget because of bad debt. I just don't want to see it happen in another area, to another county-run social housing or any social housing for that matter.
Yep. No, that's very effective now.
Any other questions for Trevor on the financials? Okay, can I have a motion then to approve the first quarter financial statements? Moved by Hall, seconded by Bernardo. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, property management report.
I'll just carry on. We are basically on target for our rent, RGI and market. We have a person moving out that's going to correct that. You will see there's a vacant unit number 14, required complete painting. The resident was there 4.5 years and we've got that rented. And we do have vacancy upcoming, but that's all we have at this point. Like, these people aren't just moving out because they don't like the property. Our rents are very fair. And I think there's definitely a better sense of that whole community. Though all the work they did in the gardening last year, there is a nice community spirit about it for sure in the last 2 years. COVID's been funny that way and it's been very positive for the property.
Okay, that's good. All right, any questions on the management report? Okay, can I have a motion to approve that then? Moved by Fegan, seconded by Hall. All in favor? It's carried. New business, I had one question. And Trevor, you just sort of mentioned it there, that the work that was done in the garden and the play area last year, as I recall, I think in the fall, we had talked about ordering some pea stone or pea gravel to replace the wood chips that were in the playground area. Have we made any headway on that?
We're just getting contractors now. We're a little concerned price may be up, mostly just because obviously the price of gas and delivery, etc. Like I'm sure pea gravel hasn't gone much, but yeah, we'll be doing that this summer.
Okay, excellent. Any other new business? Okay. Next meeting date.
I think September, but I think there's probably no council meetings in September. Do I misunderstand the logistics there?
Jennifer, what looks doable there?
We could do September. Let's see here.
We do a budget meeting that meeting.
We could do the 12th. September 12th would probably work the best. The 26th gets us close to the voting period. So
Yep. Let's do the 12th then, if that's okay.
Okay. And we'll do the budget at that time?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Excellent. There's nothing else.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If there's nothing else, can I have a motion to adjourn? By Bernardo, seconded by Hall. All in favor? That's carried as well. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks, Ben, for another year.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too. Take care. All right, so we will call the regular council meeting to order at 6:55, and we will begin with the playing of the national anthem. Right. We would also like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. Just a reminder that members of council are required to state any pecuniary interest they may have in accordance with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, and those declarations must be made verbally and in writing, which can be filed with the clerk. I have a motion to approve the minutes from the April 11th, 2022 regular council meeting, as well as the Committee of Adjustment meeting. Councillor Bernardo, seconded by Councillor Buffett. Is there any discussion on either set of minutes? Okay, all in favor? It's carried. Were there any questions submitted this evening?
No questions this evening, Your Worship.
Okay. All right, so we have a few presentations. So the first is presentation to Casey Neal Powell. Is Casey Neal with us?
They have not logged in as of yet.
Okay, why don't I hold off then? We'll go ahead and see if they log on a little later. Okay, so the second presentation is from the Dufferin County Cultural Resource Center, and they're going to provide some information on why land acknowledgements are important, as well as some information on their organization and some upcoming events. So I think Debbie is with us.
Sorry, just bear with me.
Okay. Hi, Debbie, how are you?
I am great. How is everybody?
Good.
Hopefully everybody got a chance to enjoy the sunshine. Spring has sprung.
Hope it lasts.
I know. So for those who don't know me, I'm Debbie Edgerton. I am a co-founder as well as the chair for the Dufferin County Cultural Resource Circle. We have been teaching about the land acknowledgements for probably the last 3-4 years now, since people have kind of become more interested in what they mean. Land acknowledgements are a powerful way of showing respect and honoring the Indigenous peoples of the land on which we work and live. Acknowledgement is a simple way of resisting the erasure of the Indigenous history and working towards honoring and inviting the truth. So by that being said, there is actually quite a little way to go about that. Your very first thing you need to do when doing a land acknowledgement is start with self-reflection. What are you learning? Why are you wanting to do a land acknowledgement? That would be your very first question, which luckily we helped you with. And of course, we always encourage everyone to do their research on the place in which you call home. Although we help you with the acknowledgements through our elders, it does not mean that it stops there. It means that's the starting of your education, and you should be doing your research. And when you do the acknowledgements, always speak of it in the same way you speak of the Canadian flag and the singing of the national anthem. These are important things. And always speak your truth. Include they want you to have past and present. So we still have these amazing communities amongst us within about 2 hours, any which direction you want to go. Always emphasize hope and positivity as well. That's important in your day-to-day working within the government. As yourselves, or even in the world, when you talk about your land acknowledgement, emphasize the positivity of what it brings forward from your research, from your understanding when you're looking at it from within yourself. And do me a favor, never ask an Indigenous person to read a land acknowledgement. They're so tired of having to do all of this all the time, and I have elders that are so exhausted, and I feel so sorry for some of them because they're asked to do these quite often. And then that just brings the pain of the colonialism that goes along with that. And always try and figure out using one of the 3 documents, either the United Nations on the Rights of Indigenous People, the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women's Report, or the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, gave 94 recommendations. Follow one of those and find a way to do an action alongside with your acknowledgement. This is all a positive aspect to moving forward. Have I got any questions at this point? Kind of a quick overview process. No questions?
Yeah, it's one coming here.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Who?
Yeah, you're
Me?
up.
I was like, who are you talking to?
Steve, how are you?
Hi, Debbie. How you doing? As you speak about, and thank you for the presentation. Obviously, it's a very important one. When you say the land acknowledgement should, in parcel, almost be like a call to action to some degree. So not just read it and then sort of move on to the next item. I guess my question is, before I think about maybe a next step here is, would it be appropriate, or have you seen rather, let me start off with that, where the land acknowledgement is done, and at the end of the land acknowledgement, instead of just ending it there and moving on to the next item, maybe a concluding piece would be, we encourage people, for example, to visit whatever website, the 90 recommendations, that would be a call to action. So instead of just reading it as is, what I'm wondering is if in your view, that would be helpful, that would sort of be a call to action where people could go and educate themselves with respect
Absolutely.
to the call to action.
Absolutely. Those are great opportunities because not only do those 3 documents come with the different levels of government responsibilities, it also has things an average individual can accomplish themselves as well. So the land acknowledgement is a teaching tool to keep that moving forward. And if it's led by the municipal government themselves, in this case, then you're educating that much further ahead, right?
Okay, so just for everybody, I think just based on that, it might be appropriate by way of a notice of motion, maybe to amend, and that's later on in the agenda, but maybe to amend the current land acknowledgement, just to add that call to action piece that Debbie's speaking of. So I'll leave that for later on in the agenda. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I think that's a good point, and I think Shelburne was among the first, if not the first, within Dufferin County to start doing this, and I mean that's something that I think all of us, including Debbie, because I know you had a big hand in that, should take some pride in. But I also think it has to be looked at very much as sort of a living, breathing document, which can change over time.
Exactly.
And I'll be
Exactly.
honest with you, every meeting when I read it, it feels a little flat at the end. Just the county one, for example, is much longer and sort of does incorporate some of that encouragement,
Yes.
calls to action. So yeah, I think maybe some tinkering and some augmentation of the message might be well warranted. So Debbie, hopefully you can kind of help out through some consultation maybe.
Absolutely. Anytime you want.
Okay. Sorry, Councillor Wagner.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Mills. Just wondering, just to speak alongside that, is there a way to potentially embed a link to these documents underneath the land acknowledgement section of our agenda as well? And then that way, when the potential community is viewing the agenda, as it says in our line, land acknowledgement, right underneath that, you could have your 3 links, right, in order to be able to click immediately to be taken to, the TRC or the Missing Indigenous Women's, page, things like that, right? And that way, it's just putting that information in their hands that much easier as well.
Absolutely.
Just a thought as well that we could, maybe start doing that as well. Thank you.
No problem. If I might be so bold as to also suggest to using those 3 links off of your website where you have the land acknowledgement listed as well, that as well will give that additional help with that there as well. And of course, a statement encouraging people to look into this, research what you need to know, right? And I think it's a great idea.
Yep.
If I may take just a wee bit of your time, I have like a 5-minute little presentation about the DCCRC, if it's okay with everyone.
Absolutely.
Let me share my screen. We worked on this recently, so it's our brand new, fairly fresh out of the box design. Let me go here. There, okay. To give you a little history about our logo, that was created by an amazing artist, a beautiful singer, and an amazing actress who left us way too soon. Kathy Elliott is the whole reason we have our logo. So a little bit about us. The DCCRC, we began actually in a very humble kind of way. We had a request to have an Indigenous Peoples Day here in Orangeville, something that had never been done before. And by doing that, we, of course, went through a whole pile of people through Facebook and through when you don't know where to go, you go to Facebook, you find what you need. I swear you will. And I found some people who were fabulous and helped me to raise funds because we didn't get a lot back then. We were outside of all the grants that we could have applied for. We were outside everything because this was just January and we had to get it together by June. So we had the very first celebration in 2014. Also that year, we incorporated as a not-for-profit corporation on December the 10th. You can see some of the amazing programs we've done and different things we've been working on. We celebrated this year for the first time the National Day of Remembrance for the murdered and missing Indigenous women. We had 25 people out on a work day at 10 o'clock. And it was beautiful. We did a small walk from the front doors of the Alder Arena down to where our medicine wheel garden is, just on the grounds. And it was beautifully done. And we had a little circle. There's a story on our website that you guys can read. Here's some more of our things partnerships we've been working through. We have, in 2017, we put a wampum belt, which is the 2-row wampum that was created in Niagara Falls between the Dutch and the Mohawk. So it was given to us by a Mohawk and we hung it up for the town. Sorry, that did not go the way I wanted. We've also been working with when Orangeville Police was here, we worked with them. We've offered Indigenous cultural support throughout the county, Dufferin County, and specifically Orangeville councils. We had a flag raising, which the flag we raised was designed by a member of the organization. It's a beautiful flag with the medicine wheel and a turtle in the middle, which represents Turtle Island, which is where we live. course, the land acknowledgements were implemented in both Orangeville and Shelburne, as well as the county. The one with the county was, I believe, supported by Six Nations and the Mississaugas of the Credit. I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure. Orangeville, we put in the Every Child Matters crosswalk, which is absolutely beautiful. We're going to, this year, we're going to hold, all things continuing, our very first in-person Indigenous Peoples Day on June the 25th. If you guys want to join us, please come out. It's well worth it. We have drummers and dancers coming. We have some musicians. There's stuff for the kids to do. There's a tour and education around the medicine wheel. And we're continuing to create partnerships such as we have with Shelburne. We have a recent partnership with Qualia Counseling Services. This is an Indigenous-led counseling service, which we're hoping to be able to support more of the Indigenous community who are in Dufferin County and need that kind of service. We're working on doing an Indigenous awareness program. This is the thing I'm really looking forward to, is the Three Sisters Garden that we're going to be putting in up in Shelburne. We have we have an elder for sure coming from Six Nations to give us the teaching about the Three Sisters Garden. That'll be a lot of fun. So, like I said, it's like a short little 5-minute presentation, nothing too, but that kind of gives you an overview of what we've done in 8 years.
That's good. If I could ask one favor, Debbie, I know sort of a lot of the events that you host are centered in Orangeville. You know, that's where the medicine wheel is, and that's. But you know, sending the invites out to the rest of the council, the lower tier councils within Dufferin County, as well as county council, I think would be helpful. And I think you'll find that there'll be a lot of other municipal representatives from outside of Orangeville.
That would be fabulous.
More than happy to come. So.
I would love to have you. I will certainly send that over to Jennifer's email for you.
Excellent. Okay. Councillor Wagner and then Councillor Bonanno.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mills. Yeah, just a quick question for you. The crosswalk that's in Orangeville for the Every Child Matters, is that a like permanent feature, or
Yes.
is it? Okay, so it is kind of, because I was actually chatting with town staff regarding something of that nature here in Shelburne. So we just weren't sure if it was something that would be, you know, considered permanent, or of a situation similar to a flag raising where it would have a temporary sort of, you know, amount of time. But
No.
but that's very helpful to know that it's permanent. So
It cost about, I think Orangeville said it was a $10,000 project for them to put that in,
okay.
but
Okay,
well
so-
worth it.
Oh, totally. Yes, definitely. And that's where I wasn't sure how it worked, right? So in order for us to
Absolutely.
move forward with that here, we need to get our ducks in a row.
You also need to understand the 7 feathers represent the 7 grandfathers, and you need to understand those teachings because they're very, very basic. Things like love, respect, wisdom. I used to know them all off the top of my head, but you know, just basic ideas of that, and the sharing aspect, right?
That's awesome. Thank you very
What we
much.
teach kids. No problem.
Okay. Councillor Bonanno.
I hate this mute thing. on Zoom. I have a
Can't
hard time
blame you.
getting rid of it. I can't get rid of it. The flag that was created, is it
Yes.
possible to create another one for the town of Shelburne?
We have some left from the ones we created. Now they are a little bit pricey, but it's because it is such an original flag and you can't buy this anywhere else. And it also helps to cover the cost of our community member who created it. But it's a $300 flag, but it's one of a kind. You will not find it anywhere else.
And that's why I'm asking the question if it can be created.
Absolutely.
And if it can be created, it's something I'm going to be asking further on in this meeting, as well as I'm going to follow up on Councillor Wagner's suggestion of the crosswalk. I think that is a motion I'm more than willing to support further on in the meeting, that we have one created here in the town if it can be done.
Absolutely.
With help, from whoever it needs to help us do it, because I think it's important that the community starts to learn through these different, things, be it the flag or be it the crosswalk, of the history and issues that the Indigenous people have put up throughout these colonial periods.
Yeah, maybe one day I can even come out there and we can build a medicine wheel out there for you.
I think that would be fantastic if that could be done.
I think we can manage it. That project was $40,000 for us to raise money to be able to do it. I don't know we could do it again, but we tried.
Well, I'm sure that somewhere in our budgeting, we can find a few dollars to make that happen.
Oh, absolutely. I just would rather be honest about costs, because I know that's can be limiting for some places.
Like I said, I think we can do that. That's the end of my questions.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Thank you. I'll try to be quick. There's 3 items. One is, I'll just piggyback off of what Councilor Bernardo said and Councilor Wagner with respect to the crosswalk. And I just wonder if that's something we do, would it be wise, whether it's by town hall or in the new subdivision, because we already have the street signs that are going up in the new subdivision. So I wonder
can't wait for that.
whether it'd be appropriate to maybe even put it in that subdivision at a crosswalk there. But that's, as Councilor Bernardo said, down the road. There is an item that I want to touch on briefly that was in Debbie's presentation, and that is the Three Sisters Garden. So I just wanted to elaborate on that a little bit more so that council has a full understanding. There's in the community garden, I was able to be one of the lucky ones to secure a box. And so what I've done is I've offered that box to Debbie and her organization to plant the Three Sisters, or to create the Three Sisters Garden. So this is what she's referring to. Once that is formalized, then all of council certainly will be invited, and maybe members of the public, presumably, but Debbie is working hard on that. And so once we get a date, that will be circulated, obviously, to everybody involved. And sorry, Debbie?
We have the date. Does everybody have your calendars out?
All right.
It's going to be the 21st of May at 2 p.m.
Well, there you go. So the cat's out of the
Sorry.
bag. So
Well,
so that's item number 1. Number 2, and then lastly, and Debbie and I talked about this. I didn't see this in her presentation, but I'm just going to give this as a cue reminder. Debbie mentioned to me a project that she's working on as it pertains to the ties and the scarves. Debbie, do you want to comment on that?
Oh, absolutely. I apologize. Silly me. Where's your scarf? Where's your tie? You should show everybody what it looks like. Oh, wait, you haven't got yours yet.
Soon.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We're doing a fundraiser right now, and with September being the month remembering and education, and September 30th being the National Day of Action, we have got ties that are black silk, and they have a beautiful medicine wheel. I don't have any right here, unfortunately. I wasn't thinking about that. And I also have for October 4th, where there's that's the National Day, or sorry, oh my goodness, I keep mixing up all my dates. That's the National Day for action for the murdered and missing Indigenous women. And so the scarf we have was made by a Sioux here out of Canada by the name of Maxine Noel. And they're absolutely beautiful. one of her pieces, one of her art pieces is the colors of the scarf. I don't want to tie you up, otherwise I'd run to back and go get them. But the ties are well worth it. I've been getting nothing but positive remarks from the men that have bought the ties to this point, and the women all love the scarves. So
Maybe if you could send us an email with information as to where.
of course,
That'd be great.
absolutely. I can take care of that, because Deputy Mayor Anderson and I are trying to get together so we can get him his.
Good stuff. Denise, did I see your hand up?
Yes, Mayor Mills, thank you. With all the great ideas, with including the crosswalks, and as Councillor Wegner indicated, it's something that has been considered by staff. Pride was one of them. It might be something to bring back to the DEI committee, to have a review with them as part of the, I guess, important messages that they would like to carry forward, and also make recommendations to council. They are planning Orange Shirt Day for this year. They have looked at a number of expanded areas, considering Truth and Reconciliation Commission and other initiatives. So I'm just suggesting that while Councillor Bonato said he was going to make a motion, I understand later in that evening, it might be something you would like them to discuss in the context of other crosswalks, particularly as it was confirmed, which is fantastic. We thank you for that this was permanent, and say not like a flag raising where it's 1 month. So that we put the effort into bringing back to council all the crosswalks and the locations for your approval through the DEI is one option.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Just very quickly, just on that point, and I thank you, Denise, for talking about that or mentioning that. I received a message from, I think it's Trina Thompson at the high school, and their students are interested in how do I put it? I guess redecorating some of our crosswalks again with whether it is what Councillor Wegner and Councillor Bonato have suggested, one that reflects pride as well. And so they were asking whether or not they would have the ability or the permission from the town to work in partnership in doing some of the crosswalks that are actually very near to the school itself. And so I was going to bring that up in council inquiries, but because we are having the discussion now, so I guess maybe to Denise's point, maybe that's better raised having that discussion rather at the D&I committee, than coming back to council with maybe some form of recommendation. So I guess I'll start it there, but I just want to put you on notice that this request had come in.
Okay.
Thank you. And through the mayor, Deputy Mayor Anderson, staff is aware of that request. We did receive information from the individual you referenced. We're just clarifying that whether or not it was sidewalks that they were interested in or actual road crossings, they're obviously able to do what they wish on their own property. And I think one of the things we just want to be clear on is that as the town, we have to make sure that it's a formal crosswalk that's being painted and not create crossing linkages that are not safe. We've also, when we get to the report and we get back to DEI, we'll indicate that it's certainly not appropriate, most likely to cross on an MTO corridor, or the approvals may take a long time, and also other safety issues. So we are following up with the school for clarification. And once we have that, our intent was to share that follow up with the DEI as well. And then obviously with council through the DEI.
All right. Well, you've certainly inspired lots of conversation, Debbie.
Well, I'm glad to have helped.
That's good.
I just want to, if I may, I just want to thank this council for your empowerment of yourselves in moving forward and understanding that the land acknowledgement was but one step. And I really appreciate that Shelburne is working so hard to move to the next stages of creating their own forms of reconciliation. They're from the recognitions or the commission and anywhere else. So I want to say thank you so much for all that hard work.
Good, I appreciate that. And I think Denise, to sort of pick up on your suggestion, I think that makes sense, particularly given the fact that the Councillor Fegan some months ago had made a recommendation that we refer, reconciliation generally to that committee and to make recommendations. So I think that fits well within that mandate that we've already given that committee. And then this is maybe just some more specific direction. So in addition to those other things that we've talked about, the deputy mayor suggested he might bring a notice of motion later that would look at amending our current land acknowledgement statement. Because that was a part of your presentation tonight, Debbie, it seems to me as though that would be appropriate to kind of build into the motion now. So Deputy Mayor, in addition to receiving the report, if you want to add something to that, I think it's more than appropriate to deal with that now as opposed to a notice of motion.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for the opportunity. And I think just to bore off of Councilor Wegner's point, I think at the end of the reading of the land acknowledgement, as Debbie pointed out, there should be a statement, in essence, encouraging members of our community to visit, as Councilor Wegner said, the 3 links that are going to be there so that the community could educate themselves on TRC and the 90 recommendations. So I think if that's incorporated as you conclude sort of the reading of the statement along with the links, I think that would be appropriate without sort of making it too long.
Okay. Councilor Bernardo, are you seconding that?
Yes, I'll second that. That's not a problem. The other thing I wanted to ask your worship, on the cost of a flag, that would be a separate motion that we would put forward to ourselves later on, or can we, because
yeah, or that could be included with a motion to send to the DEI committee. So I mean that could be built in as part of their report and recommendations back.
The recommendation to create a flag or the recommendation for the cost of a flag?
Either or.
Okay, I'm sort of confused, but whatever works. I'm just thinking that the flag isn't quite the same maybe as a crosswalk. And that's just my thought process. That maybe it doesn't need to be recommended to DEI. It's something like similar as when we raise flags for the Sikhs holiday, a week of their thing, or we raise flags for heart and other flag raising issues. I'm just heart and stroke. I'm just thinking that maybe when September comes around, that we would be nice when we have the awareness for the Indigenous community in September, that we have a flag available that we can raise during that time frame.
Yep.
That's just my thought.
Yeah, just add that into a motion too, that just authorizes us to purchase a flag. Yeah, so I mean, we can refer some items to the DEI committee and and also authorize the purchase of a flag. Denise, did you have a thought on that as well?
Thank you, Ramos. I just wanted to mention that the DEI committee has a budget of $15,000. They are committed to doing a number of initiatives for Orange Shirt Day and Truth and Reconciliation. I'm sure that they would purchase the flag out of that budget as part of the initiatives and ensure that it's raised every year through the other processes. It's just a suggestion in terms of how it could be funded.
Okay. All right, so we do have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Anderson, seconded by Bernardo. Jennifer and Alice, are you guys clear enough on the direction there? Just in terms of adding to the end of the land acknowledgement?
Sir.
Okay. All right, is there any further discussion on that then? All in favor? That's carried. Okay, thanks, Debbie. We'll see you on the 21st then.
I'm looking forward to it. You guys have a great night. Take care.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, so I believe Casey Neal is here. Hi there, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. So Casey Neal was the successful artist in the competition, I guess, for lack of a better term, for designing the logo for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee.
Beautiful.
So we have a certificate for you, Casey Neal. I'm not sure if you've actually received the official one yet, but if you haven't, we'll make sure we get it to you. In ordinary times, we would have had you live and in person at a council meeting, and we could have given it to you, but unfortunately, this will have to suffice for now. So the certificate, which I'll show in a second, reads as follows: Certificate of Appreciation awarded to Casey Neal Powell in recognition of your contribution towards and being selected as the preferred logo for the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee in the town of Shelburne. Even better. Up on the screen there. So thank you very much. Congratulations. Well done.
Thank you.
No obligation, but do you want to say anything? If you don't, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
If I may, Mayor Mills, I do want to say
Councilor Fegan.
you did a fantastic job on that logo, and I was very proud to work alongside with you just to do the final touches on it. So for me personally, thank you very much for working with me. Fantastic job.
Thank you.
That's coming from somebody in the business. So Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Yeah, and just before Councillor Fegan stepped in, I was going to say that I wanted to thank Councillor Fegan for working with Casey to come up with that logo. It was a lot of back and forth. There was some great feedback with respect to the logo, and Casey obviously was very successful, and it's something that you and your family will be proud of for years to come as you see our logo everywhere, and certainly these events that we do, to know that you are certainly a big part of that. But I just wanted to say kudos to Councillor Fegan for the hard work that he has put in and continues to put in on the D&I committee. So thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Casey.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so we have two proclamations for this evening. The first is Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month, which is the month of May. And I'd like to thank James Jackson, who is an Orangeville resident, who brought this to my attention. It's a little later, but I didn't find out until after our last April meeting. So here we are, and I'm also going to be reading a similar proclamation on Thursday on behalf of the county. So the MS Awareness Month proclamation reads as follows: whereas multiple sclerosis is a chronic, often disabling neurological disease affecting an estimated 1 in 400 Canadians and approximately 90,000 across the country. And whereas MS symptoms vary widely and may lead to problems with numbness, coordination, vision, and speech, as well as extreme fatigue and even paralysis. And whereas there is no known cause of, prevention of, or cure for MS. And whereas the MS Society of Canada is the only national organization in Canada that supports MS research and services for people with MS and their families. Annual fundraising events such as the MS Walk, MS Bike, and A&W Canada's Burgers and Beat MS campaign support programs to enhance the lives of people affected by MS and their families and support MS research in Canada. And whereas since 1948, the MS Society of Canada has contributed $200 million towards MS research and is grateful for the dedication and commitment of its supporters and volunteers that has made this possible. And whereas together we will find ways to enhance the quality of life for people affected by MS and to find a cure to end MS. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Wade Mills, on behalf of Council, do hereby proclaim the month of May 2022 as MS Awareness Month in the town of Shelburne. So thanks again to James for bringing that to my attention. The second proclamation is for National Public Works Week, and that is from May 15th to the 21st. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Ontario. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals, or engineers, managers, and employees from provincial and municipal governments and the private sector. who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the residents, civic leaders, and children in Canada to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Mayor Wade Mills, on behalf of council, do hereby proclaim May 15th to the 21st, 2022 as National Public Works Week in the town of Shelburne. So thanks very much to our own operations team who do a great job. Jim, if you could pass that along, and I'll try to make a point of popping in at some point during the week to thank them. Okay, next up is council inquiries. Are there any inquiries for this evening? Deputy Mayor Anderson and then Councillor Wagner.
I don't even know if I should. I don't even know if the,
Do you want me to go to Councillor Wagner first?
yeah. Let me give it some more thought before I decide to bring it up. Thank you.
Councillor Wagner.
Thank you very much, Mayor Mills. Mine is pretty simple. So just for the public's knowledge, I guess I can direct this towards either Jim or Denise. Wondering when the public washrooms at our local parks will be open for the season. I'm assuming that some of our sporting events are going to be starting up soon, soccer and whatnot. And the little ones, after running around on the field and drinking their water, will probably really need to use them. Plus, obviously, the weather's getting a lot nicer, and we're seeing more kids out at the parks and whatnot too. So just for the public knowledge, if we can let them know when those will be ready for them.
Through your worship, yes, we did check with our operations team. They're going to have those open in the next day or so. We shut them down in the winter, just kill the water just so nothing freezes up and we don't start popping plumbing, but they will have them open this week in the next day or so.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then just one more brief one. Just wondering what seems to be the delay with moving forward with the Jack Dowling Park project. We've seen, the gazebo, be taken down and some caution tape and whatnot. And it's kind of been sitting a little in limbo over the last couple of weeks or so. So just wondering if, again, for the public knowledge and whatnot, what's possibly the delay? When do we expect to begin moving forward again? And if we have a completion date at all in mind. Thanks so much, guys.
Oh, I can take that one, and I'll just build on what Jim said too. When we do open the washrooms, we always post that on our social media feeds to let the public know, particularly those who are not field users and they're just general park public users, that those washrooms will be open seasonally. To your second question, I will automatically update council and admit that we are behind on that project, and I'm sorry. We've experienced some delays internally on our own with project timelines. We also wanted to ensure that the park concepts that we had provided to you through various previous reports in terms of the major inclusions, the gazebo, some of the landscape features, and that we had also applied for a significant grant that was based on accessibility. We did remove the old structure, one major structure, because it was leaning and was a safety issue. So we are regrouping. We're just waiting for the concept plans. We're waiting for the input, which was also a condition of the grant, which was focused on accessibility. A huge portion of the project is based on the accessible surfacing, which is concrete that has to be poured. So we're hoping that by the end of August, I know that's longer than council was waiting or hoping, that the project will be completed. We did try to look at a piecemeal approach where we would put in the gazebo a la carte. It just makes no structural sense to pour that and then have to modify the foundations or anything else around that. So the park does remain completely of use for the community as is. It just has a little bit of caution tape where the old structure was. And we're going to be regrouping in the next week or so with the companies that we hope to work with and the public input, which is, not a long time, but we want to hear from them, will be done this Friday, and then we'll collect those. I think we have about 27 comments just in a couple of days, so we'll be going through that as staff too. If there's any more information, I'm happy to try to answer the questions.
Councillor Fegan.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. To Denise, you mentioned that the park, you're aiming for the park to be finished in August, was it?
Yes, through the mayor, the end of August.
Okay, the reason I'm asking is because with, I've got so many committees, I forgot which one I'm talking about right now.
Yeah. You're going to have no impact. I know Councillor Buffett had asked too for your art in the park.
That's it.
You're free and clear. You're good.
Okay, so we can still use the park
Yeah.
for the, looks like the 23rd is what we're aiming for.
Yeah, and so what I should also add is, council does ask, and certainly I know that the residents are following up with you all the time. We have recently created, and we're going to come back to the next council meeting and profile that page. We've created a new page, and it's live now, only with Jack Downing Park on it, called Park Projects and Town Projects. And what we're going to do is every project that council has approved in the capital budget, we are going to create an icon for that. And then we are going to provide a project schedule or a project overview, and then status updates on where we are, and including where applicable fixtures. So for example, right on there right now is the Jack Downing Park. It doesn't have the existing timeline in there because we don't have it yet, but a lot of information in the council report. We have an icon for the splash pad, just to say coming soon with information. We have an icon with the off-leash dog park, which we've actually started site prep on, and we're hoping to have that done at the end of June. So that will be formally posted and updated. We will have information on the tennis ball and pickleball courts, which I know under communication, we have some exciting news, which Councillor Hall will reference. And we'll put the water tower on there. And this is going to be our new site to make sure that the projects are always high profile. Community access is there, and most of all, council is informed of where the projects are in terms of your approvals. So, and we'll bring back that page to you again at the next meeting, since we'll have a bit more information to share.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay. Councillor Buffett and then Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Yeah, I was just going to ask to Denise regarding the splash pad. I know that we're having the golf tournament coming up in the next few weeks, and that should bring us as a Rotary Club very close to the top. It's hard to know the exact number now, but I was just wondering from the town's perspective when we're going to start doing any prep on that site.
Through the mayor, we had recent confirmation from the Rotary that they had purchased the equipment that they were purchasing from Park and Play, that it will probably be delivered to the town by the end of August or early September. And we will start working with the supplier now that it's been purchased on specifications and everything that we need for our side of the project, which is the site preparation. And I'm not sure, I have to touch base with Will on when staff will connect with that group. But we will start working on our side as soon as we have all the specifications that we need to start proceeding. It's not going to be hooked up the day after the equipment is delivered. There's still site work to go there. There may be a little bit of time that people may enjoy it this season yet, if it's a mild fall. But I guess the worst case scenario is that it's going to be an amazing new feature come late spring, early summer 2023.
Yeah, and I had one more question, not related to that. In the Philgate development on highway, excuse me, Main Street, where the park area is and has all the trees planted, there's quite a number of trees that are burnt out and they're just dead. So I'm wondering, are they required to replace those?
Through your worship, yes, we'll go through at the end of that before we assume the whole subdivision, and we look specifically at trees, so they would have to replace whatever's died in the meantime. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Anderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Mills. And I know that I joined the meeting late, so my apologies. But I'm pretty confident knowing you, Mayor Mills, that you probably didn't mention this because you're too humble of a guy. But I just wanted to say that I had the privilege of attending with Mayor Mills and Councillor Wagner the unveiling for the Gary Galbraith Memorial at the park on the weekend. It was an excellent turnout. I'm not going to profess that I knew the gentleman, but I could say that even not knowing him, you could tell that a lot of people did and certainly valued him, and that's the reason certainly why there was the unveiling. But what I wanted to comment on was the wonderful words of encouragement and certainly reflecting not only council but the community and certainly the family that Mayor Mills gave. I think for everyone who was in attendance, the message was well received, but in particular for the family. And so I was honored really to stand next to you with Councilor Wagner as you represented us, I believed, quite well, and certainly the family on that day. So I just wanted to thank you publicly for that.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it was a great turnout. The Galbraith family is a large family, and just sort of a funny aside story. But when I first got there, I was talking to one of the Galbraiths and mentioned that that there were more people there than I was expecting. I was pleasantly surprised. And he said, well, looking around, most of them are family. So he said, beyond that, it's sort of a bonus. But no, it was a great turnout, and Gary's kids, most of whom I know reasonably well, we're quite happy and quite honored to see that up there in memory of their dad. So yeah, so thanks again to Paul Smith, who originally brought the idea to council, and then thanks to council for supporting it. So it was certainly a good event. Yeah. Councilor Bernardo.
I'm sorry, unfortunately, I couldn't be there on the weekend because I had some other issues family issues I was dealing with. But my inquiry is on the painting. Bicycle lanes, with the season coming up as it is, we have more bicycles going out on the road. The bicycle lanes are really faded, really hard to see, and the logos. And I'm not sure they're being used the way they're supposed to be used, especially if you don't have the logos. People don't feel as safe as maybe they could feel when they're on those lanes, especially on Greenwood and Fiddle Park being the town bypass currently, and the amount of vehicles going down there. So my inquiry is along that way there. I know painting usually starts in sometime soon, I hope, with the weather being warmed up as it is, and that I know we get to our crosswalks, but I think our bicycle lanes are equally important as our crosswalks.
Through your worship, yes, we're just finishing up the street sweeping, so that'll be done within the next week. They're getting in closer to the curb lines, so I figure that's going to be complete within the next week or so. And then, yes, with the warmer weather, the paint does dry quicker. The guys don't have to stay there and guard the crosswalks or the parking spots or whatever. That should be starting later on this month, actually. The paint has been ordered, and they're just waiting for that to come in, and then they can get to the bicycle lanes and the parking stalls and the usual.
Okay. All right, any other inquiries before we move on? No? Okay, I think we've exhausted everything. So the first report is a report from the CAO regarding the right to disconnect policy.
Thank you, Mayor Mills. The report that is before you is a result of legislation that the province implemented in early December of 2021 called Bill 27, Working for Workers Act. It's primarily a bill that came about in response to some of the impacts that were being felt as COVID had required and legislation had required people to work from home. There was a bit of a blurring, we understand, with people's ability to literally disconnect from work as they worked from home. They were being approached during long hours, obviously, and there was an expectation by some employers, we understand, that people would work extraordinary long hours, and it would have serious impacts in a range of areas, including mental health. This is not unique. It is in Canada, but it is following some of the precedents that have been set in a number of European countries, namely France, Germany, and Spain, among others, to create that kind of separation when you're not working. So by June the 2nd, all employers with 25 or more people had to have a policy. There wasn't a lot of direction with respect to policy content. There was direction at a higher level that came out later, which I've attached, which is the written policy on disconnecting from work, which we have incorporated into the policy before you, which is being implemented and has been implemented or will be. What it does do, though, is provide some guidance on what that disconnection entails as it affects communication, correspondence, and all those kinds of things that with the age of technology that we work within makes somebody's ability to disconnect a little bit more challenging. That said, this in some ways is not much more of a protection that ESA or Employment Standards Act provides for people. It's also recognized that in our area of work, there are always emergencies or after hours impacts for services. And we do have guidance and policy through ESA that requires how overtime is compensated. I've also indicated that as an employer, we automatically expect, and it would be a natural occurrence where some positions will work overtime, whether it's scheduled or unscheduled, and you're compensated accordingly through legislation or potentially your employment agreement and the other provisions within our HR policies. But what this will do is create a stronger foundation on what disconnect means. As an employer, we will be creating more working opportunities for training and education to help people understand what the disconnect means to them, how they can balance some of the workload pressures that they may be experiencing, and overall just trying to ensure that we have a healthy workforce, that they have a balanced life, and that they're productive. And we recognize that their work is part of their life, but it is not their life. So again, we're not alone. All employers in Ontario with 25 more people must have one of these policies, and it must be effective by June the 2nd, and it must be distributed to all staff and provided to all new employees. So we'll be also looking at how we use our out of office telephone messages, and anything else with respect to internal tools to ensure that we're meeting the expectations of this policy, and including, as the last page in the policy there'll be a signatory page that all members of staff will need to sign. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Questions for Denise? Okay. I have a motion then to receive that report. Councillor Buffett, seconded by Councillor Fegan. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, thank you. The next report is a report from our clerk regarding delegation of authority in the event of a potential lame duck situation.
Sorry, sir. Item number 2 is the.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I missed one. Sorry. Okay. Second report is from our Director of Development and Operations regarding potential solutions to the parking issue as it exists on Cook Crescent.
Thank you, and through your worship, this is a combined report between myself, the Director of Development Operations, and the CAO. We've collectively worked together to bring forward the report to you this evening. And so correspondence had previously been received from a resident on Cook Crescent regarding winter parking concerns. As we know, during the winter months, parking on street parking is restricted. So between the months of November 15th to April 15th, 12 a.m. to 8 a.m. This ensures winter road maintenance and snow removal can be completed. Ongoing parking concerns have been an issue on a number of town streets and neighborhoods during the winter months for many years. And we recognize the fact that parking frustrations, there are certain parking frustrations that homeowners face. The homes specifically in this development have 2 official parking spots comprised of one in the driveway and one in the garage. The purchaser agreement from the developer, which outlined the parking provided, also had to be signed by all buying a property in that development. On January 31st, staff met with Mayor Mills and Councillor Wegner regarding the correspondence received, And staff confirmed the following additional review. Staff report to council on the issues and options would be provided. So before you tonight is the options that were discussed on the 31st of January. Option 1 would be to create an additional parking area on the north side of Cook Crescent. Given the current requirements for parking spots and parking locations, currently there's also utilities, trees, streetlights, that sort of thing that are currently in that location on the north side of Cook Crescent. Those taken into consideration, those would need to be relocated. In order to accommodate proper road basing and possible fill material with asphalt curbs, stormwater modification, it is expected that these changes could cost in excess of $525,000 at current construction costs, which is a very rough estimate and does not include engineering costs. This option would also require MTO approval, as the north side of Cook Crescent is within the 400-meter radius of the MTO controlled corridor. If allowed by the MTO, this option would require extensive infrastructure work and create negative impacts for snow removal, clearing operations in the winter months. One thing to consider to recover some of the costs associated with this possible option 1 is municipalities may impose special charges known as local improvement charges. So parking area specific accommodations should be funded by those residents experiencing a direct benefit through local improvement charge. Local improvement charges are an existing financing tool that is used by municipalities for neighborhood capital improvements. Repayment of the financing by the owner is added to the property tax account and runs with the land. If the property is sold, the new owner continues the LIC payment. From the municipal government perspective, the payment obligation attaches to the benefiting property, not the owner, and is secured by a statutory property lien. Property owners also have the option of repaying the LIC in full. So the second option discussed was to provide a town-wide exemption for boulevard parking as a trial and pilot project basis during the winter months. Currently, as we know, boulevard parking is not permitted at any time throughout the year. Specifically during the winter months, the boulevard is utilized for snow storage. This option would create new winter maintenance issues and possible damage to vehicles, as snow clearing opportunities will be restricted. Shelburne generally experiences significant snowfall, and especially during winter storm events where boulevards are critical for snow storage use. This option also creates a safety hazard and sightline issues trying to negotiate a driveway where a vehicle may be parked, blocking access and sightlines to and from a driveway. The third option discussed was to approach the owner of the vacant parcel of land located at 300 Colonel Phillips Drive, currently owned by the Roman Catholic Episcopal, to inquire if parking accommodations could be provided on that site. If the landowner would allow this, it would require the town to lease the property for a fee to establish a new municipal parking lot using a permit program. The estimated capital cost for gravel parking lot with about 20 permit parking spots would be approximately $27,000, or it could, at high end, $74,000 for an asphalt lot. There would also be costs for snow removal. In addition, the current zoning of the subject property may not allow for parking lot, resulting in the need for a zoning amendment application to rezone the lands. The cost for that application, $3,835. And so the staff recommendation, while we recognize there are parking challenges throughout the town, it's not specific just to this Cook Crescent area. There are significant parking challenges during the winter months for some other majority streets within the town. Staff are not recommending any of the 3 options outlined in the report be implemented. However, there are 2 municipal permit parking lots in the downtown area that have overnight parking. The Wellington Street lot could be used. It is recognized that this may create inconveniences and may not be viable for residents of Cook Crescent, but currently we do have residents that are living elsewhere in town utilizing those parking lots as winter parking because they cannot accommodate all of the vehicles in their driveway. So a monthly parking permit fee is $35 plus HST, or $420 per year. And a general map showing the walking distance is attached as Appendix 3. Also noted in the correspondence received from the resident was the sidewalk. The letter indicated the sidewalk was originally to be relocated on the north end of Cook Crescent. That was never intended during the development of the subdivision. The approved required location of the sidewalk has not changed. The developer had originally installed the sidewalk at the wrong elevation. I'm not sure if you remember this from 2017. The developer was required to remove and reinstall the sidewalk at a lower elevation to fix the drainage issues. At the time, the developer requested to relocate the sidewalk to the north side of the road, which was considered but was not permitted. At the time, some residents expressed their desire to have the sidewalk relocated to the other side of the road, while the majority of the other residents indicated the sidewalk should be on the side with the homes so that they did not have to cross the road to use the sidewalk. Others did not comment, but consultation was obtained during that process. So at that time, no changes were authorized to the approved location of the sidewalk. And so circling back to the recommendation in the report is to receive this report for information. And that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I may need to draw on Jim and Denise for assistance.
No.
You're muted, Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Realize that. Thank you. Yeah, so just before I jump to Councillor Buffett, as the report indicated, Councillor Wagner and I had received an email from a resident, and we referred it to staff, and then met with staff in January. And I mean, at least from my part, and I think Councillor Wagner was of a similar mind. I mean, I wasn't coming into the meeting with any kind of preconceived idea of what the solution would be, or quite frankly, if there was a solution, but the whole idea was to go through an exercise to see if there was something, feasible and reasonable that would help solve the problem. And thanks Jennifer and Jim for doing such a deep dive into this. I mean, unfortunately, the answer seems to be, at least from a reasonable and feasible point of view, that there just isn't an easy fix to this. But thanks for your efforts. And I mean, at least in good conscience, I feel comfortable enough going back to that resident to say, this isn't something that we simply swept under the rug. We looked long and hard at what options were available, and that there just isn't a good solution there. Councillor Buffett.
Yeah, so my first question before we get into the options is, I thought that any developer, because we weren't on council, some of us, when this happened. And usually when there's a letter of credit posted, anything not done or not done correctly, those funds can be used to rectify any problems. So my question is, why wasn't that done to start with? So there was no issue.
They did fix it at their cost.
No, but fix it to where it should be. Is it where it should be?
What's that?
The sidewalk.
Yeah. They installed it incorrectly initially, and they came to council at the time, and I think it was only Councillor Bonato and I there at that point. I don't think Deputy Mayor had joined council, and the developer had asked, as an easier solution, to simply move the sidewalk to the north side, and sort of on balance, given the commentary that we had from residents, we said no. That's not going to be the solution. Dig up the sidewalk that you put in incorrectly and do it properly. And they did that at their cost.
Right. And my second point, or my second comment, is based on the letter from Christine Blanfield. Her comment or recommendation or thought was to be able to have a parallel parking on there. And obviously that the result was that it's on town property. But if it's not going to impact or block the sidewalk, having it be on town property, how much of an issue is that for the road when it's quite a number of feet from the road to allow that? If we were to put in a temporary signs just to test it out and see how that turns out, to make an exception to our normal policy.
So tackle that one, Jennifer, Jim.
Through your worship, do you mean parking at the same parallel to the road between?
Well, the way I understood it, she meant, like, for example, if we had two cars in the driveway and there was room to park another car, but you could do it parallel and then still be able to get walking past the sidewalk, then there's still a bit of room between there and the road. So even snow landing on the side is not going to affect anything.
Yeah, if it's between the sidewalk and the street, that still does leave us pressured for snow storage area. So the wing of the plow, whenever it does load up with snow, that can actually, if you're pushing that up against the vehicle, you can damage the bodywork or cave in the side of the vehicle. And we actually had that with somebody who was parking out on the road. Oh, I believe that was last year, actually.
So you're telling me that the snow gets plowed onto the sidewalk as well as the parcel of land?
It does to the end of their driveway. If there is any overflow with that snow, then the trackless gets up and it's cleaning the sidewalk as well. So it's a two-stage process there. It's a little bit of a fight between sidewalk machine and plow truck. So
yeah, well, we have that problem now with everything going the way it should be. But I don't know why that's something that we couldn't consider. And I guess the thing that bothers me about this whole process is that I can't see any reason for the residents that live there to have to pay for all these expensive services if we did decide to do something like that. Because, you know, using the situation we used back on, School Road, when some of the houses there got connected to sewers, that's a normal thing to connect and then pay for your sewer hookup. But this is something that should have been dealt with before. So that's just what I have to say about the comments.
Councilor Bernardo?
I'm going to respond a little bit to Councilor Buffett's comments. Some of the issue there is with the issues I continually raise with the planner. First of all, people don't park in a garage because they load it with stuff. And secondly, you know, having two vehicles, they have no place to park the second vehicle. And I don't know how we can change that. I keep getting the comment that the province mandates that, but that is the issue. And every time we have townhouses or things of that nature there, we seem to have an issue with parking in the community. As far as the history of what went on there, Cook Crescent is a very narrow street compared to most of the other streets within the community. That also creates an issue in parking in that area. And that has been an ongoing issue that we've heard about for quite a while. Why it's narrow, I'm not 100% sure. The history of that area has been that way since day one with parking and knowing that we have a parking issue there. Snow has also been an issue, and I agree with our technical, I forget Jim's full title, and it's hard for me to remember it. And I'm sorry, Jim, but I agree 100% with him. When you see even out on the regular streets, the sidewalk snow removal along with the plow removal, and I've been at the end of a driveway, and I have a full driveway with no sidewalk on it, and our vehicles are parked one behind the other, and I've seen that snow come damn close to hitting the back of our vehicle when the plow is pushing through, and I'm standing nearby it watching the plow go by. So I wouldn't want somebody's vehicle hit damaged. I'd rather they had to park somewhere else and walk to get to where they had to go home than to have no vehicle to go to work. That would be my concern. And it's a liability on the town's part, you know, if we create something of that nature there where their vehicles are damaged. I understand staff's review, and I agree with them 100% all the way through. And I'm going to have no issue agreeing with staff. It's just, like I said, a planning issue as far as I'm concerned. That's where the error is. We don't plan to have a vehicle in the garage. That is a silliness on our part, you know, saying that a vehicle can be parked in the garage and a vehicle in the driveway, and that creates two parking vehicle spaces. That's not always true, unfortunately. And, you know, we have to realize that some people have grown children that go to work and have a vehicle and park as well as the parents. And you end up with not just one or two vehicles, you end up with 3 or 4 vehicles in the residence. And that is the issue that is probably ongoing. So I don't know how we can change that. I think that somehow in our planning issues, we have to change that we create, not just 2 parking spaces, but realize we may have to create more parking spaces when residences are created. I'm just wondering, if we made an exception to allow residents to park on their own lawns, if they have more than 1 vehicle, I don't know how big the lawns are in that particular subdivision, if it's allowing for at least 1 more vehicle to be parked on the townhouse lawn. I know it damaged their lawn, but that is, another consideration.
Outside of the property standards issue, I guess I mean, just thinking visually, Jim, you probably know better than I do. The lawns are pretty small for each individual unit there, are they not?
They're almost, if I'm thinking of the ones that are on not on Cook, the other side, that I know some of the places there, they're almost the width of a driveway, the lawns.
Yeah, through your worship, our general rule of thumb there is that you can't exceed the 40% lot coverage of the frontage of your home. That's what we've been sticking with. In some cases there, and I believe we have had that request from a number of residents on that street about we're totally removing their front lawn and just paving everything, which yeah, we've just been holding them to the 40% standard of what we have with the rest of town. So
I don't mean in the summertime. That's not what I meant. I meant when the ground starts to freeze up in the wintertime, if they want to park on their lawns, not in the summertime. I don't mean park, paving the whole lawn. I'm trying to think of another option for them, because in the summer they can park on the street. But I'm thinking of the wintertime when we ban parking on, during the hours that we need for snow removal. Can they park on their lawn? And that's where I was coming from.
Through your worship, I have seen some people do that. I don't know if that's maybe back to Jennifer for parking issues there again.
Yeah, Jennifer.
So currently the new Clean Yards bylaw that was enacted by council that came into effect April 15th does not permit that.
And that's where I'm wondering if we can change that bylaw to allow that for the townhouses on Cook Crescent that are currently running into the issue, understanding that that is not similar to the rest of town. I mean, I've got lots of room to park and I can park, to park on my lawn is stupid. But in a situation where they don't have that room, whether they can park on their lawn.
My concern with that, and I mean, kudos to you for thinking outside of the box. My concern with that might be that we're opening another can of worms where, the neighbor next door may not take too kindly to having a car basically right outside their front door. So it may solve one problem and create another problem or a safety issue with kids, out on the lawns, because in many ways, I mean, yes, there are separate and distinct lot lines, but those are pretty small lawns. If kids are out building snowmen or, stuff like that, I would have concerns about cars wheeling up on the lawns. Councillor Hall.
Yeah, just another concern with that would be, where is the actual snow stored? It's got to come off the laneway now, it's got to come off the lawn, and it's going to end up on the street where we're having to deal with it. And the neighbor next to them is going to end up with a driveway that's fuller than what they're complaining about now.
That too. I mean, the other thing that I sort of thought about when Councillor Wagner and I first met with staff, and this is small consolation, I guess, to the people living there, but it's not as though parking spaces have been removed. So, in many ways, the residents on that street bought these homes, whether they were original purchasers or bought resale after the fact. They bought the homes knowing, or at least they ought to have known, how many parking spaces were available. And, it's unfortunate that it's so tight, but that there is a certain amount of responsibility on each individual homeowner to make, whatever proper accommodations they have to plan for that. You know, if it were a situation where we did have a public space across the street and we were taking that away, that I look at it differently. But you know, nothing has changed in terms of the number of spaces that are available. It's just, to Councillor Bonato's point, I think, you know, people are having more and more vehicles per household, and they're struggling with where to put them. Denise?
Thank you, Mayor Mills. I just wanted to note too, and completely as the report that Jennifer and Jim co-presented emphasized, that the frustrations that people experience is certainly something that we're aware of. We thought that, you know, the opportunity at 2.2 kilometers for walking less if you're driving at the Wellington lot was an option that potentially could be looked at. And to Councillor Bonato's point about the planning side of this, I just want to remind council of what will happen with the intensification targets that we're going to be faced with the demands that are now before all municipalities through the recent legislation. And staff has been providing you with updates on the presentations that we attended and how AMRO has commented with the passing in the Royal Assent before the consultation period had almost finished, that some of those concerns about intensification will just become more magnified, that we will be seeing probably zoning request changes, potentially more intensification in the number of units, and those units that will be designated to have no parking. So what we're facing may be something we're facing in more magnitude going forward as we learn whether or not through the MCR of the county that our population projections will indeed be 18.3, which had identified that being a real challenge on our existing 6.6 square kilometers. And in the absence of a boundary expansion, how we would actually grapple with that going forward. And that infill would become more in demand, where some of the things you as council have grappled with and struggled with respect to how many units will be on one severed lot. So I just don't want you to think that the parking challenges that you faced in the past that you've identified as challenges are going to go away. They might likely will become, unfortunately, the norm. And I know that that's not good news, but it's the reality, and we need you to be prepared for that and understand what this legislation, as we've tried to identify through many inputs, is going to result in a small community like ours. It's facing enormous pressure on an existing small footprint. I mean, our density, as we said during the truck bypass review, at that time was equivalent to some areas of Vaughan. When you look at a per kilometer or per square foot number of people per area, it's exceptionally dense. And Steve had said that the only way to resolve that is infill, intensification, and vertical integration, which means going up significantly. So sorry, I just wanted to remind everybody of that.
Well, and I think that, you know, reinforces the point that, you know, this is not going to be a singular issue, and it's not going to be one that goes away. And you know, although these three options that staff have surveyed, you know, again, don't seem to be feasible, you know, that's not to say that we shouldn't stop thinking about creative solutions. So, you know, going forward, if anybody comes up with any other ideas that are going to work and don't create spin-off issues on their own, you know, I don't think this is a dead issue entirely, but the three sort of obvious solutions that have been surveyed, you know, in staff's opinion, and I tend to agree, just aren't really workable. But any other thoughts at this point? Okay, so the recommendation is just to receive the report at this point. Is there a mover and seconder for that? By Councillor Bonato, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, before we move on to the next one, why don't we take a quick 10-minute breather and we'll reconvene at 8:30.